it was a time of needing to decondition all of who I was. Everything fell from under me. I didn't know who I was anymore. I had no confidence. I didn't know what I was doing. So I used human design particularly to find my conditioning, who I was, how did I get here? What am I meant to do? Everything kind of just went down the hill. And then through that, basically, I have had all these amazing doors open, and it's been the most, I hate to say it this way, but it's been the biggest gift.
Welcome to the Phase 4 podcast, inspired by Vishen Lakhiani and Ajit Nawalkar, co-founders of EverCoach, a division of Vine Valley. In this podcast, we speak to coaches and creatives about where they were, where they are, and where they are going. This is the intersection of what we focus on expands, and your story is your superpower. My guest today is Jocelyn Bates. She is a creative conduit, an energy worker, a healer, and a soul artist. And today we're going to talk about all that and more. And Jocelyn, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. And thank you for having me here.
Yeah. I usually always start with just tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you ended up in this space.
All right. Yeah. Well, I've been working in creativity and art, and I even started when I was a teenager in a very crazy time, dancing with Gabrielle Roth, the 5 Rhythms, moving into musical theater and modern dance, and then becoming an expressive art therapist, intermodal, which is working throughout. It's kind of that place where the arts shift. So you might make a piece of art, but then you might talk with it, you might dance it, you might make music to it, and kind of shift through your healing. And then I became an unschooling mom. So I became really like the holistic mama bear, and that was kind of my focus for a long time. And then in 2021, my parents died. And they died 7 days apart, and they were very, very healthy. It was during the COVID time. And it kind of shook and rocked my whole world. And so there's my cat hanging out. She likes to come in. That's Gaia. And so when that happened, it kind of blasted open a lot of the work that I had done previously. I started using art to try to work through the healing and creative expression. And I ended up following the breadcrumbs of my mother, because after she died, I wanted to be close to her. So I started looking at her emails, and she really liked human design. And she was holistic. She was an aromatherapist, Feldenkrais practitioner. And so I started following her breadcrumbs, and I ended up getting really into human design with Karen Parker, and then kind of moving further with Emma Dunwoody. And then from there, I learned about the Akashic records, and I got trained in the Akashic records. And at that point, my grief, it was in a wave, and I got into a place of insomnia and anxiety where anytime there was a sniffle in my house, I thought someone was going to die. So I started doing yoga nidras and meditation. And I was also doing transcendental meditation at the time. But I started doing yoga nidras to fall asleep, and I got really connected to Ali Bousroyd, who's an amazing yoga nidra teacher. And she invited me to do the training to become a yoga nidra guide, because it was something that very much helped me. So I did that. And I began working with soul shaman, Janet Straight Arrow. And so I've been working on my own soul shaman journey. And then from there, I started working in soul art, which is it's kind of a way to weave together my original expressive art therapy, but with this new kind of spirituality that was beginning to awaken in me. And so now I'm working in soul art, as well as the Akashic records and yoga nidra and human design. But it was a journey of when you lose your parents, so quickly. And especially as an only child, having lived with them with 3 kids who also lived with them, and having it out of nowhere, especially in the COVID time when I couldn't have any closure. It was a time of needing to decondition all of who I was. Everything fell from under me. I didn't know who I was anymore. I had no confidence. I didn't know what I was doing. So I used human design particularly to find my conditioning, who I was, how did I get here, what am I meant to do? Everything kind of just went down the hill. And then through that, basically, I have had all these amazing doors open, and it's been the most, I hate to say it this way, but it's been the biggest gift.
I know exactly what you mean. No, my dad died right in front of me, and at the time it was horrible, but looking back, it was like, wow, I don't know, like for me, it was like a release or something, or freeing. Like I was able, I don't know, weirdest thing, but like I wasn't a man until that happened or something, even though I was, but weird. But your story is awesome. So all these things come so fast too, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And so, but you had an expressive arts therapy already in your background. So now that you have that plus all this energy work, like those two can go together really well. But I think a good place to go here would be, can you expand what is human design for those who don't know? And then maybe we'll go down even difference between yoga nidra and what was the other yoga?
I mentioned transcendental meditation.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But they're both meditation.
Oh, for sure. So yeah, maybe we'll start with human design, and for those who don't know.
Yeah. So human design is, it's basically a mixture, or like a map, an energetic map of astrology, I Ching, numerology, Kabbalah, tree of life, the chakra system. And it's similar though. You get, if you have an astrology chart, you can look at your chart. There's a human design chart. And in that human design, it takes into account all of these different systems. And so you can look at your chart, and it's off of your birthday, time, month, place, all of that. And in that chart, you can find open, undefined centers and defined centers. So it'll kind of help you to feel where you feel others' energy and where you're solid in your own. And also all the channels and gates are connected in a human design map. It looks like a person almost. It's like these centers. And you can see where other people affect you, where you affect other people, and the gates and the channels all connect to astrology and the planets. So it's a really intense system, actually.
It's crazy. I talked to a human design coach, and she told me things about myself that I didn't even know. And then I started looking back and looking through my life, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like so accurate. Yeah.
I've had the same experience. Everyone I work their charts, they have the same experience. And, what really in the end, though, everybody has all the gates, all the channels, all of the centers. It's just kind of what's magnified or what you can work on. But by looking at it, you can see where you have been easily conditioned in your life. So like, for example, I have a solar plexus undefined. Solar plexus undefined is your emotional center. So I feel everyone else's emotions, but I don't have a connection to my own emotions all the time. So if I had known that when I was a teenager, I can't even imagine what my life might have been like. Because I was magnifying everyone else's emotions all the time, And so like you start to be able to look into just simple ways. Where am I easily conditioned? It's not those aren't the only places you're conditioned, but where am I easily conditioned? And it gives you a little bit of a roadmap to start deconditioning.
I hear you. I when I picture that, I think about colors and just like different colors from other people's, instead of other people, like they're a color, and then all these energies are like overflowing. And yeah. I think most coaches are empaths, where they're taking on that energy and finding it really hard to block, deflect, relax, release. How do you find that? Still, is it like that, or?
Knowing when you become aware of these places in you where you take on other people, like I know that in my thinking, my analytical thinking and my inspiration are open. So that's open all the time. So I don't have a real grasp. I do really well when I'm speaking with others because I can connect to their analytical thinking, their strategies, and their, their inspirations. But I know this about myself. So if I really need to do something and I need to figure out, I'll go find somebody who has that center defined to chat with me, or together we have that center defined to chat with me. And I know how to kind of work through those places where I don't have that plug-in. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what gene keys?
Yes, I'm very familiar with gene keys.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's because it's a little similar to human design, but it's that and Reiki were like the only two energy works that I didn't see on your resume. But
Well, gene keys and human design are very connected, but I was just saying to someone the other day, human design almost gives you a stamp to work with, right? But gene keys are contemplative. You have to read your gene keys and you have to sit with it and you have to question it and you have to find those places in your life that feed that gene key so that you can really get into it. So it's really more of like, it's almost like a shaman journey for me to go into gene keys.
love it.
Yeah.
How about color therapy? And then the reason I'm asking that is because of your educational background, expressive arts therapy. Does color therapy come into that?
I have not worked a lot with color therapy, though I do have all the glasses. I've been in and out of a lot of things. But, I do think color is, and I've also worked with a lot of kids who are synesthesia, who have synesthesia. And that's where you can like see things like when you hear a name, you see a color, or you hear a sound, you see a color. And they're never the same. So that makes me question it. Like one person will hear a sound, but it's blue to them, and another person will hear a sound and it's like green or brown, right?
Okay.
But the idea of color, I think, is very personal. I know the color chakras of the root up to the, the head chakra, they have the specific colors, but I'm really a fan of like this rainbow light. It's one of the things that my shaman teacher talks about, that, the rainbow light is something that, you might have variations of a red, or you might have like orange in your root. Like that maybe needs to balance out the red, right? So I think color is very personal.
Yeah. Yeah, you got lots going on. And you said your cat's name is Gaia?
Gaia.
Nice. Hi, Gaia. I love it. Mother Earth. Okay. And then how about, the Yoga Nidra?
That's interesting too, because Richard Rudd, who does the Gene Key books, right? He speaks, I was just reading a Gene Key the other day, and it was talking about the subtle selves, which I'm like, did he do Yoga Nidra? He has to know this, because he talks about samskaras and about the subtle selves, which is very much something that happens in Yoga Nidra. Yoga Nidra is like a meditation. It's a guided meditation. It's effortless. And this is something that really brought me back to my body when I was in the worst of that grief wave, because you get your nervous system gets imbalanced between parasympathetic and sympathetic, and you just get you're constantly on the seesaw, right, between depressive and like fight or flight, and that's what was happening to me. And so Yoga Nidra is a place where we go back into our body, and we basically tap into all 5 subtle selves and balance that nervous system. And there's different layers to those subtle selves, or those koshas, and he speaks about it. Richard Rudd speaks about it in the Gene Key. So I'm like, he has to know about this. But no, Yoga Nidra is beautiful. It's effortless. It's finding a place of comfort, and then just listening and guiding. Like you're really finding the most relaxed place, so your body, you're not holding on to anything. And you're just allowing the words, and you're allowing your inner ears to open. You're allowing the ears of your heart to open. You're creating a place in yourself where you can just begin to unfold. And then eventually, as you unfold, you go through what's called a rotation of consciousness, which is like the most delicious part of a Yoga Nidra. It's like you just go through little body parts and you relax them slowly, but you're not doing anything. Again, it's effortless. You're just placing your awareness and then allowing it to relax, and you go through body parts. And after that, in a little bit further, you do a little bit of breathing, and then you go into this place of witnessing yourself from the outside. It's another part of your subtle self, right? And so as you go and you take part in these Yoga Nidras and these meditations, and especially if you do it on a more I would say routine basis, doesn't have to be daily, but if you're experiencing it once or twice a week, you start to be able to feel your nervous system go out of balance, and you start to be able to pull it back. You know, these simple techniques to get to a place of, okay, I can handle this. This is my human experience. Like, this is okay.
Yeah, I love it. I do this at the dentist. I'll put my awareness, like, it started with just putting my awareness on my shoulder and then like feeling my elbow and then on the outside of my elbow. But now what I'll do is I'll put it on the wall and look at myself in the dentist chair. And I'm telling you, it helps.
Oh, well, I have massive dental just traumas in my life. So when I go to the dentist, I'm like tapping. And then I get there and I'm like breathing. And
breathing is the key. So when you're talking about sympathetic, parasympathetic, getting into your body, which is another way of saying getting out of your mind. Is that right? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
getting into the present moment. Yeah, you're
Right.
getting out of your mind. You're being present in it. In that just relaxation, listening, effortless, moving through. Yeah.
And breathing is the key to all this, I find. Like, deep breathing, it will reset your nervous system. Like, and it is all about the nervous system.
Yeah. One of my favorite is the physiological breath. The 2 sips in gently through your nose, opening your mouth and sighing it out. That's like the most beautiful breath to me. I always think whenever my teacher would talk about it, she'd say 2 gentle sips in through your nose and then out through your mouth. And it was just such a good, I feel I do that anytime I start to feel nervous, and it immediately begins to bring me back to the present moment.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I think the exhale a little bit longer than the inhale, that's another thing to help reset it. And then soul shaman, is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm currently working with my teacher, who is a soul shaman, and we work on journeys and journeying into it. It kind of connects to the Akashic records in a lot of ways, because you're really journeying into dimensions, timelines, realities, parallel lives, right?
Yeah.
And you're journeying, working with different, I work with my ancestors a lot on shaman journeys. And that's something I actually didn't do until my parents died. I'd never really connected to my ancestors, but I felt a need once my parents died to connect into that ancestral root. And so it wasn't until the last few years that I put an ancestral altar out that I connect with them. And oftentimes in my journeys, and I journey every day, so often in my journeys, I'm connecting to my ancestors. So that's a really fascinating when you're working in the shaman journeys, and there are a lot of ways to journey for yourself. It's such a beautiful thing to begin to follow the intuition. You follow what pops up for you, follow your guidance, and see where it takes you. And sometimes we are in the journey. I end up in the Akashic records. It's interesting too, because the Akashic records for me, the way I had been trained, is different than how my shaman teacher teaches it. So I've now had 2 entryways.
Can you talk about them?
Yeah. So when you're in the way my shaman teacher speaks about it is a crystal castle. Like when you're in your shaman journey, finding your crystal castle, finding your way there, and then really integrating yourself into that place. And then you can kind of ask questions or move or meet guides there or meet your spirit team there. And when I go into the Akashic records, I use the mantras that have been channeled through the Akashic teachers and through the mentors, masters, and ascended masters. So I actually use the mantras and go in, and I go into other people's records as well. So that's one thing. When I do, it's like you have to have permission. You have to be there. But I use the mantras and move in from there, and working with the keepers of the Akashic records, working with the angels, and working through past lives, future lives, through parallel lives. Yeah, the Akashic records are a beautiful place because they allow us to see, and this actually goes right back to Yoga Nidra and also Richard Rudd in the Gene Keys. They allow you to see your samskaras, which are your karmic patterns from other lives. And you just have to remember that when you speak in the spiritual realm of karma, it's not the karma that most people think of. Most people think, right, if I do something, I'm going to get 3 times worse or better. But karma in the spiritual world is very much about, it's just these energy patterns, these grooves, these things that have been, these grooves that we've created through choices and energy that we've made that create easy rivers for behaviors and choices. And
Right.
we have those from past lives and we have them from future lives. And so the Akashic records are a beautiful place to just realize, be aware, change, transmute, move.
Transmute's a good word. The way you're saying pathways, I think I just finished reading this book, Michael Singer, called Living Untethered, The Human Predicament. He talks about some scars, and he talks about that, how what's happening is when we're blocked is like that those pathways are blocked and you can't get around, and how we just kind of have to release instead of shove it down and let it come up. And I went through a spiritual awakening pretty fast. Yours sounds like it was really fast too. And during that period of time, all this energy just kept trying to come up. And at first it was like choking it out. It was so overwhelming, like just deep breaths and wells of emotion, right? And at first I was trying to choke it back down. It was so, but then I figured out, oh, you know what? This is like bad energy trying to get released. And I better just release it or I'm going to stay here. And I'm really happy that I did that earlier, that I found that out early on, because it saved me probably a lot of time. But that's a great book. He talks about some scars and almost the same way with the pathways. He doesn't call it pathways, but he's like, same thing. He calls them rivers, I think.
He's like riverbeds, right? It's like the grooves of a river. It's just been, and the more the water runs through it, the more the river become maybe deeper, or if it's like a heavy river, right, it can kind of carve out. It's like that groove, and it's not good or bad. It just is. In this life, we bring many, many other lifetimes into this life, and we bring those lessons and we bring those choices. And so we have the opportunity to become aware of those grooves and to change the direction,
Yeah, definitely. I'm either like Mayan or Egyptian in a past life because I'm like addicted to pyramids. I love it.
Oh, I love pyramids as well.
And maybe one more is tarot reading. So it's like how do you approach tarot readings and what do you think about that?
I've been reading tarot since I was 12. It's been I was very connected to paganism when I was younger. I had a great role model, and so she used to bring us to like witchy stores in New York City, and I got my first cauldron when I was like 13 or 14. And so I always played with cards. And that was how I made my way through college. I would go to the bars at night and I would do readings at the bars for people and make money for my everyday living. I don't necessarily do tarot card readings, but I bring in cards a lot in my soul art journeys. And I'm always looking at new cards. Some of my favorite is the archetype deck. Have you seen the archetype deck? It's, I can't remember her name who has it, but it's an amazing deck. It's a circular deck. It's not actually tarot card. Like it's not a full spread of tarot cards. It's different. And it's one of my favorites to work with. It's just so, every time I see an image, it's so evocative and it brings up so much. But for everyone, the deck they use is different. I mean, it's the one that they're connected to and that feels right imagery and energy wise for them. But I do love cards. I feel like just the act of shuffling and putting some intention in there and, seeing what comes out, no matter, you're always going to learn from it,
Yeah, I love it. I'm the fool, that's for sure. And when I remember someone flipped it and I was like, at the time I got sensitive about it and I was like, I'm not a fool. But then I was like, oh, I am a
got
fool.
The interpretation of that.
Yeah. Then I figured out, I'm like, okay, that's okay. I don't mind, because I think lifelong learner, that's a thing, right? Kaizen, and it's called continuous improvement in Japanese. And just the idea of being a lifelong learner, and it keeps you humble, right? You don't know everything. You're always growing. And that's a pretty cool way to live, I think.
Yeah. That's one of my big things is that idea of curiosity. I've come to that recently because, everything we go through times in life, there's never going to be a time in life there's not going to be some kind of trauma. There's not going to be something that throws you off your ship that doesn't, meet with, that completely just throws you in a different direction. It's always going to happen. And, we have to kind of have ways um, to deal and to walk through and to learn through all of that. And some of the biggest traumas, like we were talking about grief, are the biggest openings to what can be possible in your life. So to get really curious about what am I connected to? Like for me, it's been creativity and meditation. That's been something that's been like my thing. For other people, it might be something totally different. But to get curious and try things, and the Fool is all about trying things, jumping off, taking risks, moving, being protected in that process, always starting over. It's the very beginning of the wheel, right? So it's like always starting back over again. But every time you start, you still bring with you what you had in, in the previous turn. It's just like we've brought everything from our past lives here into this life, and it gives us fuel, so just getting curious, whether it's tarot cards or drawing or meditating or trying a different kind of yoga. I do yoga as well. yoga. But just getting curious and playing. I mean, man, we do not play enough in this life. I just did a like a story on Facebook, and I'm like, man, we need to get creative again and start having fun because we have lost this. We've lost this shit. Like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Oh man, my mom always tells me, she's like, you're like a little kid, because I'm playing with my kids. Like I'll go on the ice and play with them. I'll jump in the trampoline, and she's like, yeah, I'm a little kid. I'm like, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know how many adults, so I actually also, I teach online for creativity for kids and stuff. Teenagers mainly. And when I first started, I was almost appalled at the fact that the parents all wanted it to be grammatically correct and all this stuff, right? And I teach how to like open your mind and tell your stories. And I like the first thing I say in class is like no grammar, no sentence structure, forget about it, throw it out the window. Just like turn on your faucet of creativity. And so many kids can't do it. And I'm like, when I was a teenager, and I was a teenager in the 90s, I was all about creativity anywhere I could create it, and I feel like many people were at that time. But now the kids are like it's hard for them to open up to things. Forget about the adults who we once were like that. They're so afraid to just play. You give them some paint and they want to be in the lines, or they want to know how to do something, or they want a technique, and it's these external rules of good and bad, right and wrong, right? And what playing means, or how does this relate to money, or how I live in this life, right? And it's interesting because you can take that same model in creativity and put it in spirituality, and although I think it's easier for people to tap into meditation, but how many people can't sit still? I was one of those people, which is so funny because I do, yoga nidra and transcendental meditation. I could not sit still for most of my life. I was a dancer. I'll do moving meditation. Like, put some music on. I'll move and meditate, It wasn't until my parents died that I was like, now I can sit for hours and meditate. Like I am in this world that is completely different. But I'm 47. I would say for probably 40, if not more years, I'd say I can't meditate. I can't sit still. So it's like.
As we begin to wind down, if this episode resonates with you, please like, subscribe, share, but no hard sell, and reach out to Jocelyn. We all just learned about all the different types of energy work she can help you with, the artwork, and now we're going to learn about what it looks like to work with Jocelyn.
So I'm doing, I do soul sessions and soul art workshops. And so I work one-on-one online, and I do with soul sessions, which are working through the Akashic records and human, kind of bringing it together where you feel you need to move, right? I might feel that we go into your Akashic records and I sense a sense of anxiety, and you may need to find some yoga nidra, some way of balancing before you can move forward, even really to do the work on the trauma. but also working in the Akashic records in the sense of unleashing some of the contracts that are from other lifetimes that are in this lifetime, so that you can open up to things, to understanding your human design and knowing where you're easily conditioned. And we all are easily conditioned certain places, but to understanding where you might be conditioned, where your purpose might lie in this life, how it might be showing up, how you can tap into it more. So that's kind of the soul sessions I do. And the soul art workshops, I'm actually beginning to put some online now. I've been doing them in person, but I've been trying to put it together so it could be an online thing, because I know it's not easy to find a soul art guide in your town.
Yeah.
So in soul art's about creating intention, creating a body map, working creative expression in that body map, coming out with an insight, and then a tangible and doable spirit action. So it's a way to move into a transformation, or to move into a new phase, or into an understanding. So that's something that I'm beginning to try to put into a online format.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
You said phase. This is the Phase 4 podcast, and Phase 4 of the 6-Phase Meditation by Vishen Lakhiani is all about creating your future 3 years from today. So, where's Jocelyn 3 years from today?
I've been having this one thing I want to do, and it's come through just recently, and it's a big project. So I'm hoping that in 3 years it's taken off. And that is, it's like a subscription box, but it's around intention and around the moon phases, and kind of jumping into an intention every moon phase, but doing it in a way that kind of brings in soul art and brings in the process of getting into really juicy intentions. So hopefully in 3 years, and I love to cultivate art. Like I love cultivating, the idea of cultivating a box to me sounds just delicious. So hopefully that's going on. And then in 3 years, my daughter will be an adult. My oldest daughter will be an adult. So that will be, no, I would never try. Like, no, it'll be an interesting place for me. And I will have all teenagers, or almost all teenagers. So I'm not quite sure what that holds, but I'm hoping they join me in some of the work that I'm doing and come and help cultivate this kind of bigger awakening. So, and if you want to talk, let's see, 3 years is 2027. I don't know if you've ever done anything.
50.
Oh, what?
You're going to be 50.
I'll be 50. Wow. That's right. That's right. But I don't know if you've done had anyone on talking about 2027. Have you heard of any of the stuff going on?
No.
2027? Very fascinating. There's it's called the new paradigm in human design. And 2027 holds this big shift from what's called the gate of planning to the gate of the sleeping phoenix. And so the gate of planning has been in since the 1600s, the early 1600s. And in February of 2027, which would be almost exactly 3 years, it's going to shift completely to the gate of the sleeping phoenix, and all of the energy of planning will shut off the vibration, and the new vibration will be in. It's going to be a total shift in how we see community and how we take care of ourselves. And it'll be an interesting time 3 years from now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad, but I do know that, like, we see what's happening around with everything, right? Education, economics, all of it. That even like democracy, that it's just not working properly, right?
That's right.
And that every time you look through history, anytime there was a significant change, there was a couple of years of garbage right before it. So if 2027 is that beautiful phoenix rising from the ashes, then that doesn't bode well for 2025 or 26.
Well, so think of it this way. Since it's been started in the 1600s, we're midwifing this already. This is why the destruction of things is happening right now. We're already midwifing it. The gate of planning was all about, we take these community things, banks and schools and the Industrial Revolution and all this stuff, right? That's not going to be the way of the future in the 2027. As far as human design, astrology looks at it to all of the main spiritual kind of systems kind of points to this 2027. And it's really going to be back about, and I've heard many people talk about it. And one of my teachers, Emma Dunwoody, had a beautiful talk about it. And she's like, it's going to be back to the intimacy. It's going back to intimacy. And it's going back to no more titles and boxes and little places to put people in. It's not going to be that anymore. So it's going to be more about just like this connection. So it's interesting. I've heard many different variations of it, but yours will be interesting.
Yeah, I'll embrace it. I'm like a big believer of that, right? Like you have to, for everything to fall and burn, then like something better always comes. It's like shedding layers. We do the work on ourselves. It's the same thing, right? If you ever notice, like if you got angry or if you have an outburst, sometimes it happens that like it's almost like a shedding of a layer. And so I feel like that's what will be happening.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And they speak a lot. So in just going back to human design for a minute, they speak a lot in human design. You have what's called a strategy and an authority. And so for me, I'm a pure generator. So my strategy and authority is to respond, and it's sacral, which means I always have an answer. In any moment, I have an answer. It's an or an or a yep or a nope. And you have to learn to kind of utilize it. You have to learn, it's like a muscle, right? It's like a muscle that you work with. And just as an aside, like when I first found this out, I am that person. If anyone would ask me, what do you want for dinner? I'd be like, I don't know. And I'd turn away and walk away, right? Because I have no idea what I want for dinner. But if someone was to say to me, do you want salad? I'd be like, yeah. Or do you want pizza? I'd be like, no. Or, whatever that be. So that's my sacral response. And it's a muscle that you use. So in human design, and that's not everybody's strategy and authority. They're different per each person. But they say in 2027, if you're following your strategy and authority and you're opening up to a consciousness, your higher consciousness, your higher self, if you're trying to connect to a oneness, and using your strategy and authority, you'll be totally fine. You'll just be sitting back watching the movie,
I think I'm a connector. Is that one of them?
A what?
Connector?
Connector, no. There's generator, manifesting generator, manifester, there's projector, maybe projector, or there's reflector.
I forget. Maybe I'm thinking some other thing.
Yeah.
So before I ask my final question, I always like to let the guests take it wherever they want. So if you have something to sell it. If you have a message of hope or inspiration, anything, wherever you want to go, take it away.
I don't know. I think really right now my message is like getting curious and playing. Like that is my message. I feel like I've lived in my conditioning for so long, afraid of expectations, like listening to expectations, having doubt and fear. And I had no clue where it came from. Like I just grew up that way, right? And it took my parents dying for me to say, what the fuck? That's not how I want to live. So, and it took them for me to decondition. And I had to really get brave, because when you start to decondition, things can fall apart. I had to get brave because your mental constructs and the way you see life begins to change. Oh, I didn't have to do that. Why did I even go through that, right? Like, how did this become? And you have to get curious. And this is a human experiment that we're all in. I mean, we're just living our human experiment. And so the more curious you get, the more opens up for you. And the more you try and the more you play, and you'll find things. Like for me, I found soul art, which was a weaving together of everything I've ever done. And I get to play within all those realms in soul art, right? And for me, that's where it sits. And it brings in the Akashic records. It brings in human design. It brings in yoga nidra for me. But for other people, it's going to be something different. And some people will resonate with what I do. And some people will resonate with what you do and what someone else does, right? And it's right for them. But you don't know that until you try and you get curious. And you just say, why is it that I always say this? Why is it that I always do this? It's interesting. I was just talking with my soul art teacher, and we were talking about what's going on for me. And I said, it's interesting, because I had a stillbirth in 2008. And I said, this has come up for me like 5 times in the last week, and I don't know why. And we were talking about trauma, and I had no idea. It was very traumatic, stillbirth, super traumatic. And, but I got pregnant almost immediately afterwards. So what happened is I let go of the trauma and I became a mama. And like, and so like this, I never touched it in the way that I needed to touch it. And so then we began talking about it. And she's like, when we have trauma, we have imprints, and sometimes we need to finish the movement of that imprint in order to let go, to move, to transmute into the next part of our lives. And I had never, what happened is mine was so traumatic that I was offered to hold my baby after he was born. And I said no, but I was coming out of anesthesia. I hadn't had ice chips and I never got to hold him. And that was part of my movement. And so I took myself for a walk and I held my baby and I talked to him. And it was an hour and a half. And it was so, and when I left, I'm leaving and there's this red fox that looks me right in the eye, sits there, stares at me in the eye. And then he just runs off. And I'm like, that was it. And I felt every piece of me come back, right? I felt like it all come back. What I did when I got home was I went into my records of the event of my stillbirth just to make sure that I plugged up is there anything else I need to work with? Because the Akashic records, you don't just go into your own soul. You can go into events. You can go into past lives. You can go into relationships, right? There's so much you can go into. And when I went into my event, I remembered something after this that I never even thought of again since it happened, which was the words I can't. I had said I can't probably 1,000 times over the inducement of the birth. I said it to the doctors. I said it to my husband. I said it to the nurses. I said it to myself. I said it to the air. I said it to the gods or whatever, right? I can't. And it became an imprint in me, so much so that I had that like tape going and I didn't even know it was there. And I had to get curious in order to do this. I had to go and I had to finish that movement. I had to take the walk. I had to speak. I had to go into my records. I had to ask. I had to be there in order to hear that. And now I've let it go. But imagine that that was 2008. For that many years, it's 2024 now. I carried I can't in my energy field and I had no idea. Right. So like you got to get curious. Like why?
Yeah. Stephen Kotler, he talks about finding your purpose. And he's like, if you can mix curiosity, passion, and play. Yeah. And he even has a better one where he's like, if you take a list of 25 random things you like, so like basketball, outer space, whatever, right? All different. And then try to find areas where you can link 3 or 4 of them. And then maybe there's something like that where you've never even thought of that. It's just sitting there on the surface and it's like, whoa.
Wow. Right?
Yeah. So my final question is, how can people reach you?
You can go on my website, which is jocelynbates.net. And actually I have a PDF there for balancing your nervous system. Like a bunch of different, it's like a cheat sheet for a bunch of different ways to just, even if you're in a crowded room, no one will know. On the way to the dentist. Bunch of different ways just to balance your nervous system in the moment. And then I also have like a free clarity call if anyone wanted to come in and work with me for a little while. And then I also have an insight timer where I post all of my yoga nidras for free. So I feel like that's a service that everyone should take advantage of. Insight, not just me, Insight Timer has amazing free meditations. And I do it because I want to give back and I want people to balance their nervous system. So you can check me out there at Jocelyn Bates on the Insight Timer. And then I have an Instagram, which is Soul Sessions by Jocelyn.
Amazing. Jocelyn, I'm so grateful for your time today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun. We got to play.